Howdy, race fans. Welcome to a Thursday night edition of the Big D podcast. Before I bring in my special guest, please subscribe, like, and share the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page. You can see all my content. Got some more coming out either end of this week or early next week. So, golf fans, you'll be excited about it. And also check out the Big D podcast on Spotify and Apple. Well, whether he's telling you the weather, telling you about fantasy football, or telling you about NASCAR, he's one of my favorite people to interview. And joining us from Illinois tonight is my friend Dennis Mickelson. Dennis, how? What's the weather up in your neck of the woods tonight?
Well, we had spring on Monday, and by today it was winter again. So it's just been a crazy, typical Central Illinois, crappy March weather day today. But it's it builds character. Although some would say that I'm enough of a character already.
Yeah, you can get 4 different seasons in 1 week. One day it could be spring, the next day it'd be summer, the next day it'd be fall, and then the next day old man winter appears.
Yeah, and we're gonna hit 70 on Saturday, and we're probably gonna have snow by next Saturday. So go figure. Try to, that was what, back in my meteorology days, it made it very exciting.
Yeah, and you know what else has been exciting this year in the world of NASCAR is the next gen call.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I was a real skeptic about this car. And it seems like a really trivial thing, but I miss 5 lug nuts. There's something magical about that sound of, and I miss that because you don't get any sound with this new 1 lug tire. But the racing has been really good. I am shocked to report that because after last year, I was starting to be really soured on being a NASCAR fan. It used to be my favorite sport, and I was finding other things to do on Sunday afternoons. But this new car is really changing things for the better. And it's been a long time since I can say that NASCAR made a big change, and they appear to have gotten it right.
So obviously, this year the next gen call has taken over for the Gen 6 call. So can you explain some of the next gen call ramifications for non-NASCAR fans, unlike you and me?
Well, the biggest change is the size of the tires. The tires are wider and they're bigger than we've seen recently. Also, the cars, instead of being sort of hand built with a bunch of parts, that guys were manufacturing, everything is made for these cars. And basically the cars are, for lack of a better description, almost a prefab car. So there's less actual work that is being done in the shop, but there's more durability to this car. The previous generation car, I had some engineer buddies of mine in NASCAR that told me that the least little bit of an accident, it was almost cheaper to rebuild from scratch and build a new car than it was to try to fix the old chassis. So they would usually just sell them off to either an ARCA or an Xfinity team, and they would build a new one. But with these cars, all they're going to have to do is change the front and the rear clips, and they're going to be able to get a car back on the track even on the same race day weekend, or the same race weekend. So I think we're going to see a more durable car. The one thing that I've been screaming about for years, I've said the wheel wells on the previous car were horrible. The least little bit of a rub and guys would lose a tire and lose the race. And it seems like with this composite body that they've gone to, that a little bit of side to side action doesn't seem to be ruining the tires as bad. So NASCAR made a lot of changes this year. The look of the car, it's taken me a bit to get used to the look of this car. It's not a big drastic difference from before, but it's enough of a difference for sort of the NASCAR purists like myself that I look at it and they all look the same unless you look at the front or the rear of the car, and those are customized for each brand. But the biggest change that most NASCAR fans, if they've only watched a little bit over the last couple of years, and now they're watching this car, it'll be the tires. That is the biggest change. And ironically, I think it's the biggest change in how these cars will end up handling and probably giving us better racing than we've seen recently.
Yeah, I remember when doing some tests that Austin Dillon wrecked one of the next gen cars and got the number 3 car repaired, and he was back practicing within that afternoon. And I've seen the Xfinity series, which uses the same composite bodies, and these composite bodies seem to be tougher and can take a hit. Now, unfortunately, with the 18-inch wheels, that might be another issue. Can the tires themselves take a hit? Because it's seemingly without an inner liner, there were more when there were flat tires, and there were plenty of flat tires last week in California, that you can't drive it, that drivers are having a much harder time getting a ruined race car back to the pits.
Yeah, that was definitely the case. You saw a couple of guys get stranded when all they did really was lose one tire. So that has been a little bit of an adjustment for these guys because they're used to driving back on the rims, and it doesn't look like they're going to be able to do that. But you mentioned the Xfinity series. I just want to give a shout out to a guy that I have a great deal of respect for, Bobby Dotter, getting the win last week at California Speedway. He's teamed up with Tony Stewart this year and trying to get a little better vehicles out there to race, and it showed. Man, he got a win. It'd been a long time since we've seen Bobby Dotter go to victory lane at a NASCAR event, but great to see. Back when I was doing some PR for some young racers, Bobby Dotter was usually a guy that I sent them to if they were trying to break into NASCAR, because he knew talent. He could give you an honest evaluation of your talent. And he'd also put you in equipment at a lower price than a lot of the other guys out there. So great to see Bobby Dotter get a win.
Yeah, did anybody predict Austin Hill and Bobby Dotter's team win the first 2 Xfinity races?
I don't think so. That's we've been for years seeing, who's driving the Gibbs cars this week. That would be, who would win. But it seems like we're getting a little bit of parity in all 3 of the NASCAR series, which is great to see.
Well, while things are changing with the car, things are not changing with who's winning races. Kyle Larson, who seemingly won everything last year, won last year in California. Shocker.
Yeah, Kyle Larson is just one heck of a racer. And I really, whenever you see a big change in NASCAR, you wonder who is going to be the guy who can adjust and who is going to be the guy who can't. Well, Kyle Larson's a guy that jumps in a different car every week to race somewhere on a different track and, different engine sizes. It really doesn't seem to matter whether he's driving a 410 Sprint or 360 Sprint or a midget. Whatever he's driving, you drive a dirt late model and do well, or get in a go-kart. I mean, the guy, if it got an engine and it's got wheels, I think the guy can drive it. So I'm not surprised at all to see Kyle Larson, getting along well with this new car. And as a matter of fact, I think the dominance, he's got the potential to be even more dominant, because I think having these cars so equal from team to team, I think the driver ability is really going to be a big key. And I don't think there's a better driver right now in NASCAR, in any of the NASCAR series, than Kyle Larson.
I would agree. It seems like no matter what call, it seems like since Kyle Lawson took over command of the 5 call, that he and Cliff Daniels have developed NASCAR relationship. You see driver crew chief relationship develop. I mean, remember back in the day when Richard Petty and Dale Inman was so successful in the 90s with Ray Abraham, Jeff Gordon, the 2000s with Jimmy Johnson, Chad Canals, and Rodney Childers to Kevin Holvick. Well, I think we can say the 2020s, at least the last couple of years, are based more on Cliff Daniels and Kyle Larson, because Kyle may not have the fastest car every week, but Cliff Daniels can tune on that race car and give Kyle the car he needs at the end of the race. And how many times, whether it be at the Roval last year where they changed, well, I don't think I've ever seen the team not to change a belt on a car, not lose a lap, and not just passing everybody, but winning the race. And then last week, coming through just like in the championship finale in Phoenix, with a big pit stop to win the race.
Yeah, and that is a big key. Is, this is all new to these teams, to these pit crews this year, having just one lug on the tire. The whole, sort of choreography of a pit stop is sort of changed here. And that team just stepped right up right where they had been. And it's not a surprise, because you got one of the best teams in NASCAR and best funded teams in NASCAR. And they certainly recruit the best of the athletes. The interesting thing this year has been watching some of the teams like Joe Gibbs Racing not allowing their Cup pit team to pit in the Xfinity or the Truck Series like they have in the past, because of the difference of the lug nuts. So it's going to be interesting to see if there is a particular team that is going to be quicker with a one nut stop.
I will say it does seem a little funky only having one lug nut compared to 5 like we've seen for 100 years, but everything changes, and I think we'll all get used to the one lug nut and the number closer to the front of the car than in the middle of the car.
That's one change that I actually really like. Aesthetically, it was kind of weird the first time you saw it out there at the Coliseum, but as it's gone on, I actually kind of like it a lot. And it's the old ASA series used to do that back in the day. So it's kind of old school for me of another series that I used to follow that used to offset their number like that. But it looks cool. It actually does. And the one thing it's done is it's freed up a lot of space on the car. Man, they're selling more ads than ever before. It's real obvious now when a car it doesn't have a lot of sponsors, because that's another blank spot on the car.
So this weekend, the Cup Series is in one of our favorite stomping grounds, Las Vegas. And you know who won the first Las Vegas race last year? Some guy you might have heard of. I'm confused. I think he's driving the 5 car. I don't remember. I think it's Kyle Larson.
He's kind of the easy answer to who won last year. If you guess Larson, you're probably got a good chance.
Yeah, he only won, what, 10, 11 races?
Yeah.
But here's an interesting fact about Lawson. Last year at low to minimal wear intermediate tracks, except the first Kansas race, Kyle Larson won 4 times, and his average finish was 2.8.
Wow.
And he only led 100, and he only led 159 laps per race. I'm just saying, Kyle Larson's really good everywhere, but especially on mile and a half racetrack, just like we're racing this week in Las Vegas.
It's really interesting because when you watch him race, it actually reminds me of the dominance that Mark Martin used to have in the old Busch series when he would drop down and drive that Winn-Dixie car. And those old Busch cars were underpowered, and it was all about how you got through the middle of the corner. And Kyle Larson is a master at rolling the car through the middle of the corner. He's just so super smooth. And it really pays off. And the other thing about his driving, though, by being smooth, by being so consistent, so methodical like he is, I'm kind of wondering if we're going to see more tire wear at every track this year with these new tires on this next generation car. And that might favor a guy who's really easy, getting into the corners versus a guy like a Brad Keselowski, who is a little bit, harder on the brakes and back on the gas type of thing. Larson's just a super smooth driver. And I think that's years of experience running on dirt. He knows how to get in there and find the changing groove. And I think that's what made him so sensational. And, we're kind of learning that probably was Chip Ganassi that was holding him back for quite a few years.
Just needed to drop the 5 calls. So if there's anybody who can stop the Kyle Larson train on mile and a half tracks, who is that guy?
Hey, it's the guy who's been strong at every race so far, but hasn't seemed to be able to get the car to the finish. It's Tyler Lockett. That kid has been sensational. And
wait a minute. You're saying Tyler Lockett? I didn't know Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks first.
No, I'm sorry. I got the NFL Combine on my brain. Yeah, it's yeah. I think there's a chance that we're going to see a big upset this week. Let me put it to you that way. I'm just liking the chances of guys that are not going to be the number one guy that you might think of. Let me put it to you that way. But yeah, it's that's hilarious. But yeah, I think what we're going to see is just a lot of difference to this race. And Mr. Tyler Reddick could be quite the upset special for folks. I don't know what his odds are in Vegas there this week, but I'd take a chance on that old 8 car. I think he's got a chance.
Hey, the good news for Tyler Reddick is at least they're not racing in California this weekend.
No, and I don't think he likes that state, does he? It's been pretty bad for him. But yeah, it's the interesting thing is this car seems to be favoring the guys that were good at iRacing. Have you noticed that?
Or on dirt.
Yeah.
And by the way, Tyler Reddick is plus 1,600 according to the DraftKings Sportsbook this weekend.
I might have to put $1 on him.
I was going to say, my obvious choice then, the Kyle Larson train is Denny Hamlin, because first off, Denny Hamlin won the last time this Cup Series went to Las Vegas. 3 top 4 finishes in his last 3 Vegas races, led 305 laps, and eventually JGR will get its act together, because I don't know what's happened with JGR. True, Daytona was its own separate entity. Hamlin was caught up in one of the big ones when Keselowski and Harrison Burton caused the big melee, and then last week it was just one of those weeks. But Denny Hamlin has figured out new cars. I remember as a rookie when Denny figured out Pocono, and not just one, but swept both races as a rookie. Denningham going to figure it out. It's a good track one. I think Denningham will be tough to beat. And if you want an upset driver this week, I think you've got the right team, but I think you've got the wrong driver. I think Austin Dillon could be a sneaky surprise. And he's 30-1 right now. So you've got the same odds. Austin Dillon's got better odds than Eric Jones, Christopher Bell, Brad King, and Kirk Busch, all in the 25-1 category. But Austin finished second last week, and it seems like that Richard Childress is really good on these 1.5 mile, 2 mile races. The 8 and 3 call might not have qualifying pace, but if both calls have got consistent race pace, and I think Austin Dillon's capable of maybe not winning, but can definitely challenge.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick. I think that's a real good pick. And the interesting thing with JGR is Kyle Busch was overheating in the front of the car, and you had Christopher Bell, who was having overheating problems in the rear end. So I'm wondering if they're just not getting the hang of getting these cars cooled, because the way they've changed the way air is flowing into these cars. So to have two problems with your team like that, it was rather interesting to me. And I don't know if it was just a freak thing that happened or whether there is some issue that they're having with cooling. Another guy I like, you picked Austin, but maybe you picked the wrong Austin. Austin Cindric is off to a heck of a start. And although the last time I saw him racing in person in Las Vegas, he was flying through the air because he was driving a rally car. So it's he was only 14 or 15 years old, and he was flying, doing a rally car race back in the day. But that kid can flat out drive anything. I've seen him win on road courses in IMSA, and now he's off to a really solid start here in the Cup Series. But Austin Cindric, I think, is going to be a force all year long.
Yeah, and Chase Elliott might have a dancing partner on the road courses.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, these types of tires, the size and the width and everything is very similar to what they use in some of the IMSA sports car racing. And Austin Cindric was awesome in the WeatherTech series. So I think he's going to adjust pretty well to road course racing this year. That was that kid's specialty. He was really, really good at it.
Yeah, I imagine what Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Austin Cindric, maybe throwing AJ Allmendinger a road America race would be.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of, there's so much talent. It used to be these guys, back in the day, it was easier to handicap a road course race than it is now.
So, what driver do you think needs a good showing? Maybe not a win, but just something to start a season.
Oh man, Kyle Busch cannot have another bad race. He's got to step up and show that he can be dominant. And what better place to do it than his old hometown?
Yeah, Kyle Busch wouldn't be a bad idea, especially when you get a little home cooking. Although Vegas hasn't exactly been great to Kyle. I think he won there, actually coming from the back in 2009. I mean, 6th in the Daytona 500, 14th last weekend. He was many laps down in that race. I don't know how he got back on the lead lap and got a top 15 out of it.
Yeah, he was down 3 or 4 laps at one time, but just a freak situation, and he narrowly missed a couple of those wrecks last week as well. So that's a guy I think he's got their frustration level already peaked, and it doesn't take much to get Kyle angry nowadays.
Well, when some days you're the bug and some days you're the windshield. Unfortunately for William Byron,
Ooh.
he's not avoided the big wreck. Let's see, taking on the same wreck with Denny Hamlin Daytona. And then last week, an innocent victim when Tyler Reddick blew his tire.
Yeah, it's amazing how problems can kind of jump up and grab the same guy early and often in a season. It's just really bizarre when that happens. But it's when you get on a bad run in NASCAR, it just seems to stick with you for a while. And it's going to be interesting. Again, I keep saying, is it just bad luck, or is it a case that he's just not feeling as comfortable in this car as he did the previous car? I don't know which one it is. It's too early to tell. We haven't seen all the different kinds of tracks, but he's certainly a guy that is not had the good luck so far.
Yeah, and when you've got bad luck, there's no. I mean, hopefully William Byron can get out of it, because we know what he's capable of doing. He won Homestead. I mean, what a bit. He was running second at Daytona 500, taking on a wreck. Running well last week, taking out a wreck. So maybe William Byron just needs to better himself.
Yeah, it's when you're
let's just say this: if it came up snake eyes, he's a dead man walking.
here's when you're really doing bad. Right now, I believe he's one spot below a couple of guys who didn't even race last week. He's behind Jacques Villeneuve in the points. So it's that when you're behind guys that only raced one of the two races, you're off to a really bad year.
Hey, the good news is everybody makes the playoffs, and just takes 1 week. If William Byron won the third race last year in Miami, maybe he'll win it in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and I'm still, me, I'm old school. I will never get used to the stage thing. I will never get used to the way they do the playoffs. I'm old school. Hey, if a guy gets off to a great start and he wins the first 20 races of the year, just crown him champion, and we'll root for the rest of the guys the rest of the season. But you're right. It's it would be really a shock if somebody like William Byron didn't make the playoffs, because what, 16 guys making the dance. So it's just, I don't know, the way they do it, I'm not a big fan. If they wanted to restrict it a little bit more at the top, I'd be all for that. But I think they get a little too carried away with trying to impress upon us that we should be more excited for the playoffs, when we're always going to be more excited for the Daytona 500.
I'm just saying, would everyone agree that Kyle Larson was the best driver last year?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It was one of those rare seasons since they've gone to this chase format with one race deciding it all, that the best driver actually won the series. So yeah, last year it worked out. Some of the other years it hasn't, though, where, I still look at the system and I say, it just shouldn't be right that you could win the first 35 races of the year and finish fourth in points for the season.
2 years ago when Kevin Harvick won 9 times and didn't even make the championship 4.
Yeah, that's it. To me, as an old school guy, I look at consistency, and I look at guys that had the best season. They deserve to win the championship. That's why I was rooting for Kyle Larson last year, because he certainly deserved it.
All right, Dennis, thanks for hopping on, and hopefully the weather warms up, and hopefully NASCAR puts on a great show this week in Las Vegas, because It's either going to be heads or it's going to be tails, whether it's a good race.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was the biggest skeptic saying, hey, NASCAR's on a downhill slide, and this new car has changed that. I was very impressed with the racing last week, and so far, so good. Two very strong races, and even the race at the Coliseum was interesting.
Yeah, so now we'll get a little bit of in between this week in Las Vegas. So see you later, Dennis.
All right, Big D. Thanks for having me on again.